Hi everybody, Allie here. Welcome to the Sweet November Stamps video hop. Today I'm going to be using the brand new Royal Treatment stamp set, and this stamp set is adorable. Cute little princesses, cute little fairy images, and look at those tiny little frogs. And of course, wouldn't be complete without a little prince. Let's get started. So I stamped my little prince and princess using Memento Desert Sand. And we are going to create our background first. I've already created my masks. They're already stuck down. I have created a circle mask just out of copy paper. And I'm going to kind of take this major stick out of it by sticking it to my arm. I do this all the time. And this is just ATG adhesive. And we're going to find a happy medium as to where we want to put kind of our spotlight on our cards, and I'm not worried that it doesn't encompass our whole entire image. Like for instance, his crown and their feet are not going to be inside that circle, and that's perfect because we're using it as a spotlight. We're going to focus on using a lot of purples in our image, so I'm going to use its complementary color to create our spotlighted background. This is a Copic airbrush system. This makes every single one of your markers an airbrush. We've removed all of our masks, and I always keep my masks on the back of my stamp set because I can use them again and again. Let's get coloring. We're going to start with our princess today, and we're going to work on her dress first of all. We're first going to start with an undercoat of our lightest color, and this just helps saturate that paper and get it ready for color. Next, I'm going to start with a BO4, and we're going to add all of our shadowed components wherever the folds of her dress are, and any places where there's an overlap of material in this case. So this part of her dress is going to overhang the back side, so therefore there's going to be a tiny bit of shadow. Tiny bit of shadow on the other side too. It's going to be even thinner. I'm going to assume that the light's coming this direction. So that's why I'm making that one line thinner, just because of the cast of that shadow. There we go. And then there's folds in the gown here. So we're just going to do some very fine lines. And we could even put a tiny bit along the edge of the skirt. I'm going right over those lines. There we go. Let's go and blend things. So I'm moving lighter. I'm going to go over those shadow lines and fatten them up basically. We're going to go in and also add a little bit of shadow work underneath that frill detail. And we're going to add a little bit of shadow underneath her hands. And the reason why I didn't use the darkest marker on that is because her hands are held out away from her body. So the shadow is not going to be as stark as, say, the fabric that's sitting next to the other fabric. And then we're going to fatten up our folds. I'm going to curve them kind of out like such. I'm going over them a few times just to blend that color into the fibers of our paper. Going down both sides of that dark line. Then we're going to come in and just go underneath anywhere where that cute little frill is put on her dress, because it too is going to cast a little tiny bit of a shadow. And I'm trying my best not to lose that detail. There we go. You can always go back and play with your shadow lines. There we go. And then we're going to go one step lighter. This is not quite the color of the base, but it's pretty darn close. And this I'm just using as another blender so that we get back to our lightest. I am fattening up those lines a little bit more. And I'm going to leave the lines underneath that frill alone. I want to make that shadow a little bit more stark. I'm even going back in and under, or sorry, I'm going over top of all of those colors under that I've already put down. Okay, we're going to go back to our lightest again. So I'm going to go over everything. And this just helps to blend all of our colors together. There we go. I'm also trying to use my marker strokes in the direction of the fabric too. This just helps with the illusion. There we go. Okay, I'm going to continue on using the same tips and tricks to finish off the rest of her dress. Away we go. Now we're going to use some YGs and we're going to complete the remainder of her dress. To darken the shadows underneath the green aspects of her dress, I'm going to use a little bit of BV23. And this is just going to help darken those shadows a little bit. Sometimes you just don't have the right dark marker to get the shadowing that you want. So you can go to a BV and use it sometimes to accentuate those shadowed areas. Almost like outlining stuff too. And if you need to go back in with a, sometimes I go back to a medium, not necessarily my dark, and go over those just a tiny little bit. Just to help darken those areas. So that's another little trick that you can use to get something that's a little bit more dark. So just with adding that BV23, it helps deepen and darken those crevices. Okay, I'm going to go finish off the rest of her dress. I'm going to leave the sleeves off until I do her skin, and then we'll put a touch of green over top, but I want to lay down the skin color first. And there's her dress. Let's go in and do the frills. Let's go in and do the skin. We're going to keep it fairly simple, and we're going to do both at the same time just because there's very little skin. I'm going to again go in with my lightest color to get my paper wet. Skin, I typically do this all the time. It makes for a nicer blend, an easier time blending. So I'm going to make sure that we go underneath her little sleeves. I want to make sure because I'm going to assume that they're sheer. So the fabric that's going to go over top of them is going to be somewhat translucent. I'm going to go right over her necklace except for the gem, putting down our base coat. Okay, let's finish the other side. We're going to go in and blend out those harsher dark lines. So I'm going over some of the spots to darken it up without using another color of marker. And if you notice, I'm not going over the nose very often, just a slight swipe at the end, so it still remains the thing that is the lightest. Okay, let's go and fix her sleeves. I'm going to go to my second lightest just to put in the fold details. Ever so slightly going over those details. And then I'm going to go over everything with my lightest. And don't forget to go over her skin. And this is the reason why you do her skin first, to make it appear transparent. On to his outfit. So we want to be kind of matchy-matchy. So I'm going to go back again and use the same colors, except for I might use the darker versions of those same colors. So for instance, let's start off with our darkest on this side and work our way to the lightest instead of putting a base down. So now we have to decide what is going to be dark green. So I want his legs, no, I want his boots to be dark green. So his leggings are purple, and we're going to go like the stripes on his jacket are going to be green. So let's do that first. So this time I want a fair amount of the dark green, so I'm going to put a base or use it the most and put very little of our light YGs on. I'm going to completely outline this, and we're going to come back and put the detail. So I'm also going to do his sleeves. So this time we're only going to do 3 colors. So I want his suit to be a little bit dark, so we're only going to leave a highlight on the top because we're only going to go 1 more color instead of 4. And a tiny bit of our YG03. Again, I'm just going to go over everything. Now, with a no line, ink like this, we can go in and add some of our details back because we're going to lose some of the details like her fingers, some of their facial features. And go back in with colored pencils and put them right back in. So let's continue on with his outfit. I'm going to use the same exact colors as I did for her, but just a little darker. All right, let's color in his cape. We're going to go really dark. This is a G20 and it's very, very, very dark. So I'm going to go in and do anything that's like super shadowed. You have to be very, very careful with colors like this because they are dark and you can't go back. You have to be very sparing on these. You can always go back and increase your line size, but be very careful putting it down. Just going into all the cracks and crevices here. Sometimes I skip around. Oops, and we forgot a little his leggings. I'll have to come back. Again, you can come in and fatten any of the lines later. I'll make sure I got all the parts. I'm just putting fold lines, fold creases. And we're going to go in with a G46. Try and leave a little bit of highlight. Okay, I'm going to go in. And there's only a few biddies that need the G24. I'm going to make that some kind of medallion on his shirt. So there's only a little bit of that cape that's going to get a little bit of light kissing it. There we go. Let's fix his pants. He needs a gold buckle. I'm going to go back to my background colors. And I will fix, he has a little tiny bit of a belt showing, so we will go in and fix that in 1 second. Just blending in that orange. Okay, I'm going to go back to my G28, and that's what his belt is going to be. There's only a tiny bit of his belt showing. Try not to lose any of that finger detail. And the rest is his sword. For his sword, we are going to go actually mix a few colors. So his sword has got like the cross piece and the handle. So I'm going to mix my cools and my warms for metal. It tends to add that little bit more interest. And I'm going to go back in. So we've blended in N3 and my W2. There we go. And of course, if you need to go bring in your BV23 just to darken that line, you can. Whee! Sometimes it also helps to differentiate those two items. Okay, we're going to do his crosspiece. We're going to put in some browns here because it's so small. I'm going to keep it very, very simple. Like, very simple. I'm going to put just a tiny bit of shadow. That was an E35. I'm going to just go one more. Little bit of shadow. Tiny bit of shadow underneath. And just a little bit of detail on the handle. And again, it's so small. I'm just keeping it real. Okay, we're going to make his gloves white. So I'm going to start with an E41. We're just going to put in our shadows. Be a little tiny bit underneath his kind of his cuff there. Sometimes the top of the hand is. Now, if those lines are too stark for you, you can go in with your E40 and just blend them out just a bit. It's got a lot more blender solution in it. Okay, our final thing is our hair and our crowns. Okay, we're going to start with an E37. And I always tend to start with a dark for hair. What happens is if you start with a dark, I'm just going to underline that crown. 1 second here. So when you start with a dark and move to a light, I find that softens the detail. And so sometimes you do have to go back and add that hair detail, but that's okay. Love having super fine points on my darks too. Like, this is a fabulous tip. Sometimes your tips can degrade as you use them more often. So just be aware. If you lose the tip, just go and change out. Go and change out that nib. Another great reason why Copics are a fantastic investment. I'm just putting the detail back in the hair You can always come back and lengthen your lines. I love when you have a marker that does a fabulous job of details. Okay, E35. I'm going to leave some white areas yet to get a highlight. And as you've probably noticed, we've lost some of that facial detail. And this is where I bring in my colored pencils, because I like to go in and put those facial details. And again, we're going to go E33. I'm going to leave very, very little white left, but just a tiny bit. Tiny, tiny bit. All right. He's got some hair. Now let's do hers. I think we'll go the same exact colors because that's just way easier. Now she's got a lot more detail. She's got like a braid down the side, so just be very cautious. We're going to start with a little bit of shading underneath her crown. The nice thing about doing skin first is that you can always kind of, especially around the edge of the face, you can always kind of go in and put details back over the skin. So I'm just following the artist's lines. And again, if you want to maintain some detail, you can always put down your base coat using Copics and then come back and use your pencil crayons, your colored pencils, and go in and put that hair detail back in. But thankfully, this marker is working fabulously. And I'm just going over the hair detail, that braid detail. Just adding a little bit more color where there are folds in the hair. Sometimes you have to reposition your hand to get those finer lines in your hair detail. And I want to make sure I don't go over her crown. And she's got no more hair on that side. Just a tiny bit of detail on this side. I think we've got it all. A little bit more dark. There we go. And I think I'm going to accentuate. There we go. So E35. Put a fair amount of this color in. And for her hair, I'm only going to do a little bit of our E33. Try and leave some highlights for sure. There we go. We're almost complete. We're going to make their headwear very, very simple. So we're going to make them match. because it's just easier. So I'm going to go in completely and add in my shading. Okay, don't fret. Don't fret. Oh, and I went in and added the hair that was peeking out from his crown. BV01. Like I said, we're making this part easy. There is quite a bit of detail, especially on hers. But the thing is that you can go in and add that with your colored pencils or your weight gel pen, and it'll be so much easier. We'll put a little bit of green on his crown at the bottom here. We'll make his jewel green. I'm going back again right to those same colors. Just adds continuity. And there we go. Okay, now we're going to go in and deepen and darken all of those aspects that we have lost. Okay, we're going to bring in some colored pencils. We're going to go in to their faces. We're going to accentuate any lines that we have kind of covered up. So I'm just using kind of a reddish brown. Don't use a black for when you're going to accentuate skin. It's too dark and it doesn't look natural. So I'm just putting details back in that maybe we've lost. You could also go in and accentuate like hair details and things like that too. We're going to put his eyebrows back in, the folds of his eyelids, the end of his nose, the chin aspect or detail. You can always go in and fix up hair too. There we go, or any details that are brown. Just sharpen up the lines. Okay, so we're going to pick a lip color and to try my best to sharpen. Sharper, the better the detail. I just use a good old Stetler. It's the one that I find the best. We're just going to go in and just go over their lips. Just using a little bit of like a kind of a orangey pinky color. Okay. So now this is what's going to kick everything up a notch. So you can go in and do eye detail. You could also use a fine detailed marker like a Copic multi liner. But you see how that brings out her face? This detail makes all the difference in the world. We're going to leave her pendant white. Same with him. So this is where you can put a lot of your deeper, darker shadows in using the black. So you can darken some of the deep shadows. Just helps to push things back a bit. So you can go down edges, go down like edges of clothing. You can do like a little bit of the glove detail because it's white. Just like you can go in and accentuate those lines for the gloves. So sometimes you lose finger detail. So you can go in and use your black. And if you just do it softly, the better. You could go in and use a dark charcoal too. There we go. Last but not least, if you need to put any more white details in, we're going to use a white gel pen. So you can put a tiny itty bitty dot on the eye, and then of course she has kind of some buttons on her dress that kind of got disappeared. And of course you can put a little bit on the buckle. I'm going to go in and accentuate that buckle. I forgot. There we go. And again, it's all about the details. So if you love coloring as much as I do, there are some tips and tricks for you. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed all the tips and tricks for you. And I can't wait to see what you do with this super cute little image. Thanks, guys, and have a great day.